Attention! This is not just another YouTube video. What you're about to witness will shatter everything you thought you knew about NASA and the terrifying secrets they've been hiding beneath Cape Canaveral since 1983. Are you prepared to discover the horrifying truth about interdimensional portals and the nightmarish entities that have been infiltrating our world? The classified protocols that space agencies have been desperately concealing? Then act now. Demolish that subscribe button right now. Annihilate the notification bell, obliterate the like button, and share this video everywhere, because the information I'm about to expose could disappear at any moment. The countdown to revelation begins now. I never should have taken that basement storage room job at the Kennedy Space Center. The listing seemed perfect. Night shift, minimal supervision, good pay for a college dropout like me. The job description was simple. Organize old files, catalog equipment, maintain, inventory. They even provided housing at the staff apartments nearby. For someone who'd been couch surfing at friends' places for months, it was exactly what I needed. My name is Tom Harlow, and until 3 weeks ago, I was just another 25-year-old Florida screw-up trying to get my life together. Now I'm typing this from a motel outside Titusville, with the blinds drawn and the door triple locked, jumping at every shadow. I haven't slept more than 2 hours at a stretch since I found those files. Since I learned what NASA's been doing at the Cape Canaveral facility since 1983. I should back up. My first night on the job, my supervisor Keith walked me through the cavernous sub-basement storage facility. "We're digitizing everything," he explained, gesturing to row after row of metal filing cabinets. 40 years of paperwork that needs sorting. Most of it's routine: launch logs, equipment inventories, personnel records. Keith was a heavy-set guy in his 50s, with thinning grey hair and the resigned demeanor of someone counting down to retirement. His blue NASA polo shirt was faded from countless washings, and he had the kind of deep eye bags that come from decades of night shifts. As he led me through the labyrinthine storage area, his keycard dangling from a retractable lanyard, I noticed how he would occasionally glance at certain cabinets with what I now recognize was apprehension. "Don't bother reading anything," he advised, handing me a clipboard with inventory sheets. "Just scan the heading, log the date, and move on. You'll never finish otherwise." The basement was a maze. Concrete walls and fluorescent lights that buzzed in that way that makes your teeth hurt after a few hours. The air smelled stale with undertones of mildew and something metallic I couldn't place. The floor was polished concrete, worn smooth in the main walkways from decades of foot traffic. In some areas, yellow caution tape marked off sections with water damage or electrical issues. The whole place felt like it existed in a different time zone, separated from the world above. "Last guy quit without notice," Keith mentioned as he showed me the time clock, an ancient mechanical device that seemed out of place in NASA's high-tech world. "Just disappeared, left all his stuff in the apartment too." He swiped his keycard at a security panel, demonstrating how to access the main storage area. The heavy door swung open with a hydraulic hiss, revealing endless rows of filing cabinets, stretching into the distance. "Management says if you last a month you can have it," he shrugged, not meeting my eyes. "The apartment, I mean." Something about the way he said it made my skin prickle. But I needed this job, and the apartment was a major upgrade from my friend Dave's pull-out couch, which had a metal bar that dug into my back every night. Dave's girlfriend had also been dropping increasingly unsubtle hints about how their space was feeling crowded. I couldn't afford to be picky. "Sounds good to me," I replied, trying to sound enthusiastic. "I'm not planning on going anywhere." Keith gave me a look I couldn't quite interpret. "That's what they all say." For the first week, everything was fine. Mind-numbing, but fine. I sorted through endless documentation on satellite deployments, routine maintenance logs, and staff transfer requests. I developed a rhythm: sort, catalog, stack, repeat. The nights passed in a blur of coffee and paperwork. The apartment wasn't bad either, a small one-bedroom unit in a complex about 10 minutes from the Space Center. Basic furnishings, slightly outdated appliances, but clean and functional. The previous occupant had left behind some clothes, toiletries, and a half-empty bottle of whiskey in the kitchen cabinet. I considered contacting him, but figured if he'd abandoned everything, he probably didn't want to be found. I spent my days sleeping and my nights in the basement, gradually working my way through decades of NASA's, a paper trail. The monotony was almost soothing. After years of bouncing between dead-end jobs and failed attempts at community college, the structure felt good. I even started making plans, maybe save up for a car that wasn't constantly on the verge of breakdown, possibly look into online classes. Then came my 8th night. I'd reached the back corner of the facility, an area that looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. The filing cabinets here were older models, covered in a layer of dust, so thick I had to wipe my hands on my pants after touching each drawer. The overhead lights flickered intermittently, casting strange shadows across the floor. It was colder back here too, though I couldn't feel any air vents nearby. That's when I found the first file labeled Portal. It was tucked between routine reports on the Space Shuttle Columbia in a drawer that should have contained only launch documentation from 1983. The folder was thicker than the others, its edges worn from frequent handling and sealed with aging tape marked classified. I should have logged it and moved on. That's what Keith had told me to do with anything marked classified. But something about this one caught my attention. Maybe the way it was hidden between mundane files rather than in the secured sections, or maybe just the word itself, portal. I glanced around. Keith was nowhere to be seen, probably in his office watching reruns of old sitcoms on his tablet as he did most nights. The security camera in this section had been awaiting repair since my first day. A small piece of tape covered its lens. I broke the seal. Inside were photographs, grainy black and white images of what looked like a doorway constructed from gleaming metal, standing alone in an otherwise empty room. The doorway, or portal, was perfectly circular, about 12 feet in diameter based on the scale markers visible in the photos. Its frame was inscribed with symbols I didn't recognize, not any language I'd ever seen, but precise, deliberate markings that covered the entire circumference. Along with the photos were pages of calculations, diagrams, and a list of names with dates beside them. At the top of the first page, a heading, Project Portal, Phase 1, Trials. I didn't understand most of the technical jargon, but certain phrases jumped out at me. Interdimensional gateway, subject molecular stability, and most disturbingly, acceptable casualty threshold. The list of names was organized chronologically, each with a designation and status notation. Most were marked terminated or reassigned, with only a few labeled active. One name, Dr. Alexander Bennett, had been circled in red pen with originator written beside it and missing stamped across his entry. That should have been enough to make me close the file and walk away. Instead, I tucked it into my backpack before resuming my normal cataloging routine. My heart was pounding so hard, I was sure Keith would hear it if he walked by. But I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd seen. A portal to where? And what happened to all those terminated personnel? That night, I took it home to my new apartment and read every single page. The technical specifications were beyond my understanding, but the narrative was clear enough. In 1983, NASA had discovered what they called thin spots in the fabric of space-time. Dr. Bennett had theorized that these anomalies could be expanded and stabilized to create traversable pathways, portals to somewhere else. The documents were frustratingly vague about the destination. The early experiments had focused on sending inanimate objects through, probes equipped with atmospheric sensors and cameras. The results were promising enough that by 1986 they had approved the first human expedition, Voyager Team 1, consisting of 5 men. Only 4 returned. If I had known then what I know now, I would have burned those papers, quit my job, and gotten as far from Cape Canaveral as possible. But I didn't. Instead, I went back the next night determined to find more, and God help me, I did. After finding that first file, I couldn't stop thinking about it. When I returned to work the next night, I made a beeline for that same dusty corner. I needed to know more. It took me 3 hours of methodical searching before I found another portal file, this one from 1985. Inside were more detailed schematics of the doorway structure I'd seen in the first file's photos. A handwritten note was paperclip to 1 diagram, 2nd stabilization chamber complete, ready for human trials. Human trials. The words made my stomach turn. The file contained personnel profiles, 5 men, scientists and military types with the designation Voyager Team 1. Their photos showed confident faces, unaware of what awaited them. Only one had survived past the first excursion, according to the attached report, and his psychological evaluation afterward contained a single underlined phrase: subject exhibits significant cognitive divergence. I was so engrossed in reading that I didn't hear Keith approach. Find something interesting? His voice made me jump. I fumbled, trying to slide the papers back into their folder. Just cataloging, I stammered, my heart racing. Keith's eyes narrowed, focusing on the classified stamp visible on the folder's edge. His expression hardened, the casual indifference he usually projected suddenly replaced by something more alert, more dangerous. "Where'd you find this?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. I pointed vaguely toward the cabinet, mixed in with shuttle documentation. He took the file from my hands, glanced at the label, then looked back at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Was it fear? Anger? Resignation? "Some things get misfiled," he said carefully, tucking the folder under his arm. "I'll take care of this one." Something in his tone made me nervous. "Is it important?" Keith ignored my question, his eyes now scanning the nearby cabinets as if assessing what else I might have found. "You're making good progress back here, but we need the 90s material done first. Switch to Section D tomorrow night." He tucked the file under his arm and walked away, leaving me with the distinct impression I'd crossed a line. His footsteps echoed on the concrete floor, gradually fading as he disappeared among the rows of cabinets. I waited until I heard the storage room door close before returning to my search. This time more cautiously. I moved methodically through the nearby cabinets, careful to leave everything exactly as I found it. My hands were trembling slightly, adrenaline making me hyper-aware of every sound in the cavernous basement. By morning, I hadn't found any more portal files, but I had memorized the cabinet locations containing records from 1983 through 1990, the apparent active period of the project based on what I'd seen. As I drove back to my apartment, the rising sun casting long shadows, across the road I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I checked my rearview mirror repeatedly, but there was never anyone behind me. Just paranoia, I told myself, just lack of sleep and too much coffee. But when I reached my apartment and inserted my key in the lock, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The door was already unlocked. I was certain I'd locked it before leaving for work. I always did. I stood frozen in the hallway, key in hand, debating whether to go, inside or run. In the end, curiosity won again. I pushed the door open slowly, scanning the apartment for signs of intrusion. Nothing seemed disturbed at first glance. My laptop was still on the coffee table, my wallet on the kitchen counter. But as I moved through the rooms, I noticed subtle differences. A chair slightly out of position, a drawer not fully closed, my bed made with hospital corners when I'd left it rumpled. Someone had been here. Someone had searched my apartment. I checked my backpack immediately, heart pounding. The first portal file was still there, tucked into the inner pocket where I'd hidden it. They hadn't found it, or perhaps they hadn't been looking for it specifically. Maybe this was just a routine inspection of company housing. Maybe I was being paranoid, but I didn't believe that, not really. The following night, I arrived early. Keith was at his desk and gave me a nod that seemed normal enough. Maybe I'd overreacted. Section D, he reminded me, not looking up from his computer. Got it, I said, grabbing my cart and heading off. But I didn't go to Section D. I waited until Keith left for his usual 10 p.m. smoke break, then made my way back to the 88, 89 cabinets. With trembling hands, I pulled open drawers, rifling through folders as quickly and quietly as possible. That's when I found it. A thick manila envelope tucked into the very back of a drawer, unlabeled except for a stamped sequence of numbers. Inside was a bound document titled Portal Project, Operational Protocols. I nearly dropped it when I saw what it contained, a list of rules, 7 of them precisely formatted on official NASA letterhead, dated October 17, 1988. Portal Project, Operational Protocols, Level 4. Clearance required facility 7B, Sublevel 3. 1. Activation sequence must be performed precisely as documented. Deviation will result in unstable aperture formation. 2. No traveler may remain beyond the portal for more than 57 minutes. Molecular degradation begins at 62 minutes. 3. No metallic objects may pass through the portal. Organic matter and silicate-based materials only. 4. Communication with travelers is prohibited once transit is complete. Responses received are not from original personnel. 5. If a traveler returns exhibiting any physical anomalies, discoloration, asymmetry, altered vocalization, immediate containment protocol must be initiated. 6. In the event of unauthorized return, flood chamber with halon gas. Do not attempt physical intervention. 7. If you hear knocking from within the portal when it's inactive, do not acknowledge it. Do not respond. Do not record it. Jesus Christ, what the hell were they doing down there? I memorized the rules, photographed each page with my phone, then carefully replaced everything exactly as I'd found it. My hands were shaking so badly, I nearly dropped the envelope twice. The implications of those protocols were terrifying. Not from original personnel, unauthorized returns, knocking from within an inactive portal. When Keith returned from his break, I was dutifully working in Section D, cataloging launch manifests from 1992 as instructed. My heart was still racing, and I could feel sweat beading on my forehead despite the basement's chill. "Everything going all right?" he asked, studying my face. "Fine," I replied, keeping my eyes on my work. "Just routine stuff in here." Keith lingered a moment longer than necessary, his gaze uncomfortably penetrating. "Good. One more. Thing, your key card. It's only programmed for this level and above. Sub-levels are restricted." I looked up, trying to keep my expression neutral. "I don't have any reason to go to the sub-levels." "Of course not," he said, his tone unreadable. "Just making sure you understand the boundaries." After he left, I found myself reading the manifest in front of me more carefully. It listed equipment transferred from Facility 7B, Sublevel 3, to off-site storage. The same location mentioned in the protocols. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about those rules, especially number 7, knocking from within an inactive portal. The thought made me break out in a cold sweat. What could cause that? What would be trying to get through? I spent hours researching online, searching for any mention of a NASA portal project. Nothing came up except conspiracy theories and science fiction stories. Nothing credible. But then, what had I expected? If this was real, it would be buried under layers of classification. The next day, I called in sick. I needed to think. What I'd found was either evidence of the most significant secret in human history or some elaborate hoax. But why create such detailed files for a hoax and then bury them in storage? I drove to a library several towns over and used their computer to search newspaper archives from 1983 through 1990. I was looking for anything unusual. Missing NASA personnel, unexplained phenomena, sudden reassignments. After hours of searching, I found a small article from February 1989 about a fire at Cape Canaveral that claimed the lives of 3 NASA scientists. Their names matched 3 from the Voyager Team 2 list I'd seen in the files. The official cause was listed as an equipment malfunction, but now I wondered, had they come back wrong? I dug deeper, cross-referencing names from the personnel lists with public records. Most were difficult to trace, common names with little digital footprint, as you'd expect for people who worked in classified programs before the internet age. But I did find obituaries for several, all citing unusual causes: rare diseases, unexplained organ failures, sudden psychiatric episodes leading to suicide. By late afternoon, I was sitting in my car in the library parking lot, staring at my notes and trying to make sense of it all. That's when my phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. "We know what you found. 7B access granted. Tonight only. Follow all protocols." I stared at the text message for a solid 20 minutes, my thumb hovering over the delete button. This had to be a trap. Keith had caught me, reported me, and now someone was setting me up to what? Fire me? Arrest me? Or maybe they genuinely wanted to show me something. I grabbed my backpack, slipped my phone and wallet inside, and headed to my car. Whatever was happening, I was in too deep to back out now. I had to know the truth. The drive to the Space Center was eerily quiet that night. The roads almost empty. The security guard at the main gate barely glanced at my ID badge before waving me through, business as usual, which made the situation feel even more surreal. Instead of heading to the main storage facility, I parked in the visitor's lot near Launch Complex 39. My hands were shaking as I pulled up the text message again, half expecting it to have disappeared. It hadn't. Another text arrived. "Northwest service entrance, door unlocked, 11:30 p.m. It was 11:17. I sat in my car for another 5 minutes, debating whether to drive away and never come back. In the end, curiosity won. I had to know what was behind those rules, what they'd been doing in that facility since 1983. The Northwest service entrance was a nondescript door on the backside of a building I'd never paid attention to before. A bland, 2-story structure that could have housed anything from offices to maintenance equipment. True to the message, the door was unlocked. Inside was a narrow hallway, illuminated by emergency lighting. The air was different here, cooler, with that same metallic smell I'd noticed in the storage basement, only stronger. I followed the corridor to an elevator at the end, its only button marked SL3. Sub-level 3. I hesitated, then pressed it. The elevator descended with barely a sound, the smoothness of the ride suggesting frequent maintenance despite the facility's apparent obscurity. The doors opened to reveal another corridor, this one clinically white and brightly lit. A man was waiting for me, tall African-American, with a closely cropped grey beard and the ramrod posture of military training. He wore a simple black polo shirt and slacks rather than any official uniform, but the badge clipped to his belt left no doubt about his authority. "Mr. Harlow," he said, not offering his hand. "I'm Dr. Wilson. You've been curious about our old projects." I swallowed hard, my mouth suddenly dry. "You sent the text?" Wilson nodded. "Not me personally, but yes, we've been monitoring your access to certain files. You found the protocols, I said. The rules. For the portal, yes. His expression didn't change, giving away nothing. It's real? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. All of it? Would you like to see it? My heart skipped a beat. It's still operational. Wilson turned without answering and began walking down the corridor. I followed, noticing the cameras mounted at regular intervals along the ceiling and the subtle reinforcement of the walls. This place was built like a bunker. Project Portal began in 1983, Wilson said as we walked. A theoretical physicist named Alexander Bennett discovered what he called thin spots in space-time while analyzing anomalous radiation readings from early shuttle missions. He theorized that with enough energy focused correctly, these thin spots could be expanded into traversable pathways. Pathways to where? I asked. Wilson stopped at a heavy door marked 7B and swiped. His badge. That's the question, isn't it? Initially, we believed it was simply another location in our universe, perhaps a form of instantaneous travel. The early results seemed to confirm this. Small probes sent through returned with atmospheric samples consistent with Earth. The door swung open to reveal an observation room. One wall was made entirely of thick glass, beyond which I could see a large chamber housing what could only be the portal. A perfect circular frame, roughly 12 feet, in diameter, mounted on a raised platform. It was inactive now, just a ring of some silvery metal inscribed with markings I couldn't identify. Holy, I whispered. It was real, all of it. The rules you found, Wilson continued, were established after the Voyager 2 incident in 1988. What happened? I asked, unable to take my eyes off the portal. Wilson's voice grew quieter. The first team, 5 men, went through in '86. 4 returned. They reported a landscape similar to Earth. Trees, water, breathable air. The mission was deemed a success, despite losing Dr. Fulton. He just stayed behind. No, he attempted to return with the others. The portal rejected him. We still don't understand why some can pass back through and others can't. Wilson moved to a control panel and typed in a sequence. Lights flickered around the portal's frame. The second team went in '88. 7 men. All returned. Something in his tone made me look away from the portal and at him. But they weren't the same men who left, Wilson said, his face remaining impassive. Physically identical, down to DNA, but behaviorally altered. Subtle at first, changes in food preferences, sleep patterns, then more significant deviations. One couldn't recognize his own children. Another developed a sudden facility with higher mathematics he'd never studied. A chill ran down my spine. They were replaced. That's one theory. Another is that whatever lies beyond the portal somehow changes those who pass through it, rewrites them at a fundamental level. The lights around the portal's frame were pulsing now, creating a hypnotic rhythm. I forced myself to look away. After the second team, we established the protocols, Wilson continued. Strict guidelines for portal operation and traveler safety, but by then, it was already too late. What do you mean? Wilson's eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw emotion there, a deep, abiding fear. We didn't open a door, Mr. Harlow. We opened a window, and something on the other side saw us. As if on cue, a low humming sound began emanating from the portal. The air in the chamber seemed to shimmer, like heat waves rising from hot asphalt. What's happening? I asked, taking an involuntary step back. We're not activating it, Wilson said, his voice tight. This happens sometimes, especially when we discuss it. It can hear us? Wilson didn't answer. Instead, he pointed to a monitor displaying readings I couldn't interpret. The energy signature is different each time. We think it's trying different frequencies, looking for one that will allow it to establish a connection without our assistance. The humming grew louder, and I noticed that Wilson had moved subtly away from the observation window. I followed his lead, backing toward the door. "What is it?" I whispered. "What's on the other side?" "We don't know," Wilson admitted. "Not with certainty. The travelers who return describe it differently. Some say it's a world, like ours, but empty of human life. Others report a landscape of impossible geometry, constantly shifting. A few claim to have seen entities there, things that watch from a distance." "And the knocking?" I asked, remembering Rule 7. "When the portal's inactive." A muscle twitched in Wilson's jaw. "That started after the third expedition. At first, just faint tapping sounds from within the ring. Then louder, more insistent. Patterns emerged, sequences that our linguists believe represent communication attempts." "You've been talking to them?" "No," Wilson said sharply. "That's forbidden. Rule 7 exists for a reason. The one time we responded, a simple sequence of return knocks, 3 technicians in the chamber experienced simultaneous cerebral hemorrhages. Their last words, all identical, 'It's coming through.'" The humming from the portal suddenly stopped, the silence more unnerving than the noise had been. The lights on the frame dimmed, then went dark. "It's gone," Wilson said, though he didn't sound relieved. "For now." I realized I'd been holding my breath and exhaled slowly. Why show me this? Why not just fire me for accessing classified files? Or worse? Wilson moved to a desk in the corner of the room and retrieved a folder, the same one Keith had confiscated from me. "Because you found something we've been looking for. This file contains Dr. Bennett's original calculations, the ones that led to the portal's creation. It went missing in '89, right after Bennett disappeared." "Disappeared?" He was the first to suggest that what was coming through the portal wasn't just altered versions of our travelers, but something else entirely, something using their forms. He believed we'd made contact with an intelligence so fundamentally different from our own that we couldn't comprehend its true nature or intentions. Wilson opened the folder, revealing pages of handwritten equations and diagrams. The day after he submitted his report, Bennett vanished from his home. No signs of struggle, no note, just gone. And this file with him. Until it showed up in the storage basement, I said, pieces starting to click into place. Hidden among routine documents. Exactly. We've been searching for it for decades. Bennett was working on a way to permanently seal the portal, not just deactivate it, but sever the connection entirely. And you think these calculations could do that? Wilson nodded. Our current methods only suspend the connection. It's like putting a phone call on hold. The line remains open. Bennett believed he'd found a way to hang up permanently. So why not do it? Why is the portal still active after all these years? Politics, Wilson said with a grimace. Bureaucracy. Some in leadership see the portal as too valuable to abandon, a potential source of new technology, new knowledge. Others fear that attempting to seal it might provoke whatever's on the other side. So we maintain the status quo, minimal operations, constant monitoring, strict adherence to the protocols. He closed the folder and handed it to me. Until now. I took the folder hesitantly. What do you want from me? We want you to finish what Bennett started, Wilson said. A small group of us, scientists, military personnel, administrators. We believe the portal is too dangerous to leave open, but we can't move officially without authorization from above. I'm not a physicist, I protested. I'm a college dropout who sorts paper for a living. You're also someone who found a classified file hidden for 30 years, recognized its significance, and had the courage to pursue the truth. That's rare, Mr. Harlow. Before I could respond, an alarm began blaring. 3 short bursts, followed by a long tone, repeating. Wilson's head snapped toward the observation window, his expression hardening. "What's happening?" I asked, my heart racing. "Unauthorized activation attempt," he said, moving quickly to the control panel. "Someone's trying to open the portal from our side." Through the glass, I could see the portal's frame beginning to glow, the inscribed symbols lighting up one by one. The air within the circle shimmered, then seemed to fold inward, creating a depression like a funnel. "Who would—" I began, but stopped as the door to the chamber opened and a familiar figure stepped through. Keith. My supervisor moved with purpose toward the portal, carrying what looked like a small device in his hand. He placed it on the platform, beneath the portal, then stepped back, watching as the air within the ring continued to distort. "What is he doing?" I asked, my voice barely audible over the alarm. Wilson was frantically typing commands into the control panel. "Overriding the safety protocols. He's going to open it fully." "Can't you stop him?" "I'm trying," Wilson growled, frustration evident in his voice. "He's locked out the main controls." Through the glass, I could see Keith turn toward the observation window. Even from this distance, I could tell something was wrong with his face, his expression too rigid, his eyes too wide. He raised his hand in what might have been a wave, then turned back to the portal. The air within the ring was now a swirling vortex, colors that shouldn't exist bleeding into one another. The edges of the portal seemed to pulse, expanding and contracting like a breathing thing. "We need to get out of here," Wilson said, abandoning the control panel and moving toward the door. "Now." "What? About Keith?" "That's not Keith," Wilson said grimly. "Not anymore." As if hearing his name, Keith turned again toward the window. His face split into a smile that was too wide, too full of teeth. Then, with deliberate slowness, he raised his hand and knocked on the portal's frame. 3 quick taps, 2 slow ones. From within the swirling vortex came an answering knock. "Run!" Wilson said, grabbing my arm and pulling me toward the door. "Run now!" We burst into the corridor as the lights began to flicker. The alarm was still blaring, but now it seemed to be coming from everywhere at once. Wilson pulled me toward the elevator, his grip painfully tight. "What's happening?" I gasped as we ran. "Containment breach," Wilson replied, his voice clipped. "If we're lucky, the automated systems will flood the chamber with halon before anything comes through." "And if we're not lucky?" Wilson didn't answer. We reached the elevator, but instead of pressing the call button, he moved to a panel on the wall beside it. He swiped his badge, entered a code, and the panel slid aside to reveal a narrow stairwell. "Emergency exit," he explained, pushing me toward it. "Go, up. Don't stop until you reach ground level." I hesitated. "What about you?" "I need to alert the response team. There are protocols for this situation too." "Will they work?" Wilson's expression was grim. "They've never been tested in a full breach scenario. Now go." I started up the stairs, taking them 2 at a time, the folder clutched tightly under my arm. Behind me, I heard Wilson speaking urgently into a communication device, his words lost in the echo of the stairwell and the continuing alarm. I had climbed perhaps 2 flights when the lights went out completely. Emergency lighting kicked in a moment later, bathing everything in a dim red glow. The alarm stopped abruptly, the sudden silence more terrifying than the noise had been. I froze, listening. From below came the sound of the elevator doors opening, then closing, then footsteps, slow, deliberate, unhurried, ascending the stairs. "Dr. Wilson?" I called, my voice echoing in the stairwell. No response, just the steady footsteps drawing closer. I continued upward, moving as quietly as possible, my heart pounding so hard I was sure it could be heard. The footsteps below maintained their steady pace, Not running, not hurrying, but relentless. After what seemed like an eternity, I reached a door marked G for ground level. I pushed it open and found myself in another corridor, this one deserted. In the distance I could hear voices, shouting, orders being given, the sounds of an emergency response team mobilizing. I moved away from the stairwell, toward what I hoped was an exit. Behind me, the door opened again. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I knew who or what was following me. I broke into a run, turning corners blindly, looking for any way out. The corridor seemed endless, branching and turning back on itself like a maze. The voices I'd heard earlier grew fainter rather than closer, suggesting I was moving in the wrong direction. Finally, I saw it. An exit sign, glowing green above a door at the end of the hallway. I sprinted toward it, relief flooding through me. The door opened before I reached it. Keith stood in the doorway, his posture unnaturally stiff, his smile still too wide. But it wasn't his appearance that made me skid to a halt. It was his eyes. They were wrong somehow. The pupils expanded to consume the iris entirely, leaving nothing but bottomless black circles. "Tom," he said, his voice oddly flat, "you found it, the solution. We've been looking for so long." I backed away slowly. "Stay away from me." Keith, or whatever was wearing Keith's form, tilted his head at an impossible angle. "Don't be afraid. We only want to understand, to connect, to come through." "What are you?" I whispered. "We are the travelers," Keith replied, taking a step toward me. "The ones who have always been searching for a way in. Your Dr. Bennett opened the door, but he couldn't keep it open, not permanently. But now, with his calculations, we can stabilize the connection from both sides." He extended his hand. "Give us the folder, Tom. Let us come through properly. No more borrowed forms, no more temporary visits." I continued backing away, clutching the folder to my chest. "What happens if you come through, to our world?" Keith's smile widened further, his lips stretching beyond what should have been physically possible. "Change, evolution, transformation. Your kind will join with ours, become something new, something better. And if we don't want to change? Change is inevitable," Keith said, still advancing. "Resistance is painful." I turned and ran back the way I'd come, looking desperately for another exit, another stairwell, anything. Behind me, Keith's footsteps followed, still unhurried, still confident. I rounded a corner and collided with someone. A security guard, young and startled, his hand moving instinctively to his weapon. "Sir, this area is under lockdown," he began, then stopped as he saw my face. "Are you all right?" "We need to get out," I gasped, grabbing his arm. "Now." "Something's coming." "Who's coming?" the guard asked, frowning. "Not who," came Keith's voice from behind me. "What?" The guard looked past me, his expression changing from confusion to shock. His hand completed its journey to his weapon, drawing it smoothly from its holster. "Sir, stay. Where you are," he ordered, his voice steady despite the fear evident in his eyes. Keith stopped, his head tilting again at that unnatural angle. "You can't stop this," he said simply. "No one can. It's already happening." Then he began to change. It started with his skin, rippling, shifting, the color draining away to leave a translucent membrane through which I could see something else. Not organs, not bone, but a writhing mass of what looked like liquid shadow. His limbs elongated, joints bending in new directions, fingers extending into tapered points. The guard fired, once, twice, 3 times. The bullets passed through Keith's transforming body without effect, leaving small holes that closed immediately. "Run," I told the guard, pulling at his arm. "Run now." This time, he didn't argue. We sprinted down the corridor together, the sounds of Keith's transformation, a wet, tearing noise like fabric ripping, following us. We rounded another corner and saw it, a real exit with a push, bar, and emergency signage. The guard reached it first, slamming into the bar with his shoulder. The door burst open, revealing the night sky and the welcome sight of the parking lot. We stumbled outside, gasping for breath. Behind us, alarms were now sounding throughout the facility, and I could see emergency vehicles arriving, their lights painting the buildings in red and blue. "What the hell was that?" the guard panted, still gripping his useless weapon. "The beginning," I said, looking down, at the folder still clutched in my hands. "Unless we can stop it." That was 3 weeks ago. I've been moving constantly since then, never staying in one place for more than a night. The motel I'm in now is the 4th I've used, paid for in cash, under a false name. I don't know what happened to the guard, or to Dr. Wilson, or to anyone else at the facility that night. The news reported a security incident at Kennedy Space Center, quickly downgraded to a false alarm, and then not mentioned. Again, I've been studying Bennett's calculations, trying to make sense of them. Some parts I understand. Basic principles of quantum mechanics, relativity, string theory, but the rest might as well be written in an alien language. I'm not equipped for this. I'm not the right person, but I'm the only one who has the complete file, the only one who knows the full truth. And they're looking for me, both NASA's security teams and the others, the ones who want to come through. Sometimes at night, I hear knocking, 3 quick taps, 2 slow ones, coming from inside the walls of whatever room I'm in. I never answer. I never acknowledge it. I follow the protocols. If you're reading this, it means one of 2 things. Either I've found a way to seal the portal permanently, or I've failed, and what's coming through has already begun its work. If it's the latter, you'll know soon enough. The world will change in ways we can't imagine. Watch the skies, watch the shadows, and if you hear knocking, 3 quick taps, 2 slow ones, run. Run as far and as fast as you can, because they're coming through, and they're hungry for a new world to transform.